and Mike. As you know, I've got to run down your list of outlets. It's also inside the ACC. It's Gobbler Country. It's also, of course, ESPN Blacksburg for pre- and post-game coverage of Virginia Tech football. Mike, how you doing tonight?
I'm all over the place, Mark. How you doing?
You are. Absolutely. People know where to find me, but the best way to find Mike is you just join him on Twitter at Mike McDaniel CFB, and then you can track him from there, whether it's ESPN Blacksburg, Gobbler Country, inside the ACC. He's all over the place. Mike, what's on your mind tonight?
Not too much, Mark. I mean, we got ACC spring football kicking off across the entire conference. We got, Virginia Tech's spring practice in particular. It looked like they were going to kick things off this past week, but decided to push the start of spring practice back until March 18th. So still a couple of weeks for the Hokies here. That's kind of been the news around Blacksburg. Kind of inexplicably moved back a few weeks. There were a number of guys who were listed as injured and limited participants for spring practice. And, I think that Justin Fuente and his staff have done a pretty nice job at, making sure that a lot of these guys have stayed healthy throughout the spring period. And I think that they're continuing in that nature this spring with, pushing spring practice back a bit so they have more guys available at their disposal.
Ever since DeAndre Francois went down against Alabama the opening week of 2017 as the number 3 team in the country at that point, then they imploded to go 7-6, but at least they finished over 500, still were competitive against just about everyone, and we didn't know how bad it was going to get the next season. We thought that was the bottom for Florida State football. Jimbo Fisher, not necessarily his heart in it that final season, moving on. Wow, with all that talent, they've got to bounce back. And I was just looking at the numbers the other day on Florida State football, Mike, and it was even worse than 5-7. If you really dissect their performance on the field, they played a decent game when they beat Wake Forest by 3 touchdowns, and they played a decent game in escaping against Boston College 22-21. Other than that, they almost lost to Louisville. That's how bad it was. And Louisville was arguably the worst Power 5 team in the country. What can we make out of Willie Taggart's performance thus far? Your thoughts about Florida State, because the recruiting rankings tell us that they should still be good and that they're still stockpiling, maybe not Florida State top 5 talent, but something close to that. They almost have to bounce back, you would think.
Yeah, you would think so. And I think with Florida State, when Jimbo Fisher moved on as quickly as he did, it kind of forced Florida State at the end of the 2017 season to move on every bit as quickly. And, Willie Taggart was brought into the fold and the hire was made, and it was really Willie Taggart or bust from the start. And I think expectations, because, Florida State was ranked number 3 to come into the 2017 season, and they were so highly thought of, and they recruit so well, and they have so much talent on their roster. I think that a lot of people went into the 2018 season, fans and boosters around the program, thinking that they weren't that far off from the 2017 season, when they entered the year as a top 5 team in the country. And I think those expectations were a little bit unfair for Willie Taggart in year 1. With that being said, Willie Taggart, with the offensive prowess and with everything that was expected of him coming into his first year with the program, it was a colossal disappointment. There's no question about that. Even with expectations being high at Florida State, like they should be, and they always have been, you can't look at 2018 as anything other than a disappointment. And I think, coming into the 2019 season, obviously they're kind of turning a new leaf at quarterback. DeAndre Francois, of course, got into more legal trouble. He's no longer with the program. But really, it's not a matter really of if it's going to be James Blackman at quarterback or anybody else. For me, the real question is whether or not the offensive line can get back to doing what they've done in the past and do a much better job up front for whoever is playing quarterback and calling the signals there for Florida State next season. Because, if they can't block for whoever's back there, it's going to be a long season for Florida State. They've had that issue anyway the last few years. Even if you look back to like 2016, when they were still okay, they still had an okay season. They went to a bowl game. That's the last time expectations were kind of really, really high for Florida State prior to 2017. And they had a really strong running game with Dalvin Cook. And even since then, the running backs have been pretty good. But even so, the offensive line just hasn't done their part. And I think that's the biggest question mark going into the 2019 season. Quarterback grabs all the headlines, but I think offensive line and continuing to establish a running game is most important for Florida State.
Got Mike McDaniel on the line from ESPN Blacksburg, also Gobbler Country and Inside the ACC. Whether it's the talent advantage that Miami has in trying to win a Coastal Division, which almost never gets done, just that one in 2017. Whether it's Matt Brown at North Carolina or any other storyline around the ACC, what else has your attention that's you're going to want some information back on in the next month?
I'll tell you what, it's the quarterback situation at Miami. I mean, how can it not be? When I look at, the major storylines across the conference and, outside of Clemson, who's going to be the heavy favorite in the ACC, no matter what way you slice it. I think the biggest question mark for me is how well will Manny Diaz adjust to his first head coaching job and having that be at Miami? I mean, we saw him go to Temple for basically a week and a half. He comes back because the Hurricanes job opens up unexpectedly, and now you're going to try to figure out who's going to play quarterback. And the biggest question for Miami over the last couple seasons is who is calling the plays and what kind of quarterback play are we going to get? Because Miami, for as much talent as they've had on offense, they have not been very good. The last couple of years, really, even in 2017, when they had a 10-win season, there were a lot of games in there that they could have lost, and it was really their defense forcing the turnovers and doing everything that they did on that side of the ball under Manny Diaz. It really helped Miami throughout the 2017 season to get to an Orange Bowl. And you saw last year when the defense kind of regresses to the mean, you don't necessarily turn over the ball as much as you expected, and then the offense continues to be mediocre at best. That's the kind of season you're going to have. And it was a rough go of it for Miami, and it's just going to be interesting to see who they end up going with as a starting quarterback. If Tate Martell is eligible and he's the guy, it's going to be a great thing for Miami. Obviously very highly recruited and highly thought of, but they have a lot of talent up and down that roster. Multiple 4-stars in the quarterback room. So they got to figure out something, but the quarterback play that they've gotten out of Malik Rozier over the past couple of years is not going to cut it. And I think they know it as a coaching staff coming in, the whole new staff. And I think the fan base knows it as well. There's not going to be a grace period for Manny Diaz in year one.
All right, everyone. We encourage you to check out Mike's work during the season at ESPN Blacksburg, pregame and postgame at during the Virginia Tech football games, and also inside the ACC. Obviously, conference basketball tournaments starting here next week, and also Gobbler Country. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks.